Today we're talking about asking good question, and this was born from the Friday sit hot we had with Aaron. Hot sit, I mean, we had with Aaron. So asking good questions. So we're looking at the art of asking good questions, and this is very important, especially when joining an organization or like in the workplace. It's very good to ask good questions. And here we'll be looking at what are the criteria for good questions, what makes questions good, and why are some questions assigned as maybe dumb or not too good questions. So do you remember a time maybe where you asked a question, maybe during an onboarding, or you asked a question in a class, or you just asked maybe a colleague, or you asked a question and then they responded with, that's an excellent question. Like, how does it make you feel? For me, that type of situation, like you feel excited, elated, you feel like you've done an excellent job, especially when the question you ask, like others have like a follow-up question based on what you asked. So the feeling is a really good one. And here we're looking at how to ask good questions. And why is this important, especially in the workplace? Because asking questions, it drives discovery and innovations. It makes you understand deeper what it is that the project is about. For example, if you're just working on a new project, then if you ask clarifying questions, it will make you know the direction of the project. It will make you realize your contribution towards the project, and it even enhances collaboration and engagement as well. So it's very important to ask good questions. And they had different categories of questions. We have the open-ended questions. This one is to like explore ideas and maybe your thoughts. So here you can, for example, if you are just joining a team, or maybe you are just joining a workplace, you are the new employee, you the type of questions you ask them will be they'll be open-ended, because you need clarifications. You need them to expand and explain more about in details about what it is. So those type of questions are like open-ended. They help us to explore ideas. Then we have another type of questions, which is the close-ended questions. And in this case, it's usually, and the answers are usually like yes or no answers. So, and there are also type of questions that maybe you want to dig deeper into details. If you're working on a project, you want to dig deeper into details of it. So you ask your managers or your lead on the project. And there are also clarifying questions that you ask to. So here is to seek understanding and maybe remove ambiguity. So you ask clarifying questions so that for more understanding, maybe you are working on something, you do not get it quick. So you ask more questions and the likes. Then why crafting effective questions? There are some things we have to put in mind. The questions asked should be clear and concise. They should be to the point, not beating about the bush. And then you should avoid leading or loaded questions. For example, if you are just new to a workplace, you can have series or even couples of questions that you want to ask. But all of this, you should just try to ask the ones that are important. And because when you ask someone like lot of questions, and along the line they'll just forget which is which. So you ask important questions, and here you should use appropriate language and tone. You should try to be professional when asking the questions, and you should always align with the context of the occasion you're asking the questions. For example, if you're just new to it, and the type of question you ask will be different from if you're like at a social gathering. So it should always align. Then the next one we'll be looking at is different scenarios. So we're looking at different scenarios. Different scenarios on asking questions. My network is slow. Sorry, but can you still hear me? Okay. So okay, thank you. So we have different scenarios where we ask different questions right from the onboarding. So the first one we'll be looking at is onboarding, and this is when maybe you are new to a company, or perhaps you are new to join a team, or you are new to a project. So what type of questions are you going to ask here? Mostly they are usually open-ended questions where you need clarification on the direction of maybe the project, or what your role is on the team you are being assigned to. So the type of questions you ask should show engagement and willingness for you to learn. And you ask this type of question at the beginning of the project, maybe when you have the first meeting, or the for your first your onboarding session. So you ask your different questions. For example, you could ask like, the team should explain the current project and what your role is in those within the team. Different scenarios, like different questions that you could ask here. Then another scenario we look at is the coffee chat, and usually this is perhaps doing maybe different coffee breaks, or you are on like a work social gathering. So here the type of questions you ask, they will be engaging, and mostly they are open-ended question and just exploratory. For example, if you're out with different teams, not just your own team, so you could ask questions along with, oh, what's current project, what is their current project are they working on. Just ask your colleagues like, oh, their educational background and why are they excited about their new project, just to keep the conversation going. Most times this type of questions, they are open-ended, and we should always try to make our questions respectful and not just asking because you feel like you have to ask a question. You should show genuine interest in it, like you are really interested in knowing what it is. Then the next one we'll be looking at. So the next one we'll be looking. This is slow. So the next one is when you are leading a team. When you are leading a team and you've been assigned as the team lead, for example, in this type of, for example, so here the type of questions you ask will be like strategic questions and usually open-ended questions. So, and they are asked during the initial meeting, is for you to understand, like have a clear understanding of ex- the expectations, your expectations, what's the goal of the project and all of that. So here, for example, you could ask like, how frequently would you like updates? For example, when you are working on a new project and then you ask your manager, how frequently should do they need you to like update them on the project, and what's the format and all of those other questions. So the next thing is when you are requesting support when overloaded. When you're working with a team or even at the workplace, it's possible for you to get overwhelmed sometimes. So when you want to ask this type of questions, they should be direct and they should be constructive. For example, here now, if you're working on a project and then you are feeling kind of overwhelmed and you need help, you want to request for support, this should be done before everything, like before you start drowning in all the tasks and then you'll be looking like you're not efficient enough. So this should be done way beforehand, and you should ask for help before everything come crashing down. For example, you can, and when you are asking for help here, you should tell them what it is, like your other engagement that you have, other work you have to do that will prevent you from maybe completing the current one. For example, you can say, given my current project commitments, you are finding it hard to meet up with the deadline without compromising the quality. So you can ask for help, and can we discuss like ways to redistribute the some of the tasks. Then the next one we have is maybe when you are the next one is, for example, also the fifth scenario, when you have questions, maybe curiosity driven questions, and maybe you are curious about the recent company development. For example, if your company they just started working on a new project, or maybe the CEO just found out, okay, they want to start working on a new project, and then it may not be related to your team. So there you can ask like, what's your team's like what are the things they expect from your team regarding the new project? So could you elaborate how the new strategy will impact your department? All of those things, and they are usually like open-ended and clarifying questions. Then the fifth one we have is when you are requesting for leave. So in a workplace, when you want to maybe request for leave, maybe a maternity or paternity leave or any other leave, it could be due to emergency or you want to just go on vacation, any of those things. So here, you need to you need to request the time off for vacation or personal reasons or any of those other health issues. So most times you have to be clear on on the exact dates you need to go and your reason for leaving and when it is that you are expected to come back. And you should always ask well in advance, except in cases when it is an emergency. So for example, questions you can ask here is like, what's the procedure for submitting a leave and how can you request and how best can I prepare in like for your absence? Maybe you delegate your tasks or some of the things you're working on, you ask your other colleagues to help you out with it. So there, those are some of the questions you can ask here. Then the seventh scenario is on resignation. So we started with how different questions you can ask when you are just joining a team up to maybe the coffee chat. So here look at questions you can ask maybe during when you want to resign. And this could be from different reasons. Perhaps you found another opportunity in another place, or maybe your current role you don't feel welcome, or perhaps it's just like toxic for you. So here, irrespective of what reason you have for leaving, you should always try to be respectful and professional regarding your resignation. But during this period, you can ask like what are the steps that you need to follow to ensure smooth handover. If there are any NDAs like non disclosure agreement or any of those other things, like what are some of and some companies they require like when you are leaving you have to give them like feedback, like you have an interview with them just to give them feedback on what it is or why you want to go and all of those things. So you just ask questions around those things like what steps do you need to take to ensure smooth handover of your responsibilities. So those are some of the scenarios and some of the questions you can ask in a workplace. So now, one thing we should bear in mind is that questions they are not just about getting answers. They are about like understanding deeper issues, unlocking new opportunities, and even for collaborating more effectively. Those are some of the reasons why we ask questions. Basically, the three major reasons for asking questions. So yeah, before we move on to the challenge, does anyone have question? Okay, go on. Film, sir.
Okay, can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Uh, I'm going to ask the difference between open-ended and the clarification types of question, plus that
Okay.
proven types of the question. What are the difference between open-ended, proven, and again clarification types of question?
Okay. So you're asking like what's the difference between open-ended and clarification types of so for example, when you ask open-ended questions, like they are always around, like they are always broader. So the person will give you broader answers because like for the questions can lead to another question and the likes. But with clarifying questions, they are more specific. Like the what you're asking is more specific. You understand? For example, if you're working on a project, then is the clarifying type of questions are always like maybe you are when you are working on a project, you have specific answer you are looking for. Maybe you need understanding about it. But with the open-ended questions, you also need understanding, but it's more useful when maybe you are just working on a new project or or you're doing your onboarding sessions.
Okay, but what about proven?
What do you say?
Proven types of question.
What about
Proven.
probing? Okay. So the probing type of question, that is when, let me go back there. Okay, so it's when you are like asking, digging deeper into like the details of it. Does that make sense to you?
Okay, it seems like similar with an open-ended question.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, please come again.
Okay, it seems like similar with open-ended question. The
Yes,
probing types of question is
yes. So like the open-ended questions, and the open-ended here is more about you like you're exploring ideas, though they are similar. But most times they are used in scenarios like, okay, for example, during the maybe you have the coffee talk. So you just want the person to like go on and on just to explore maybe the ideas or share your thoughts and the likes. But with the clarifying, you need more like understanding about it. They are similar in a way. So you need more understanding about the particular thing you are asking about.
okay. Thank you.
So any other question? Okay, so let me move on to the let's look at the challenge document. So here we talk about asking good questions, and let's look at the tasks we have here. So the scenarios below they are of different there are different scenarios where you need to maybe ask questions, you need to maybe you're curious about something or you need more information, and they've been grouped into different scenarios. The first, so what you have to do is that you determine whether further questions need to be asked to better your understanding. Determine whether further questions need to be asked to better your understanding or to satisfy your curiosity, and if not, for each of the scenarios, and if not, you decide if you decide that no further questions are needed, you give three reasons why you feel so. But then if you decide that further questions need to be asked, or then you write five specific questions. So you write the five specific questions that you think needs to be asked more in each of these scenarios. So the aim to formulate questions that are clear, they are purposeful and relevant to the context of the scenario. So here we have 10 scenarios. The first one is that during a team meeting, it is announced that your objective is to enhance the performance of an existing machine learning model. The meeting ended with the team discussion discussion only focusing on general goals for improving model operations within the next quarter. So here you look at it, are there further questions you need to ask in this scenario? What are some of those questions you need to ask? And if you feel like you don't even need to ask any other questions, so why do you feel like you don't need to ask other questions? So the second scenario here is that the HR department sends out a memo detailing a new company policy on remote work, which includes eligibility criteria, steps for application, tools provided by the company, expectations for remote worker. So the memo is thorough and includes a frequently asked question session that addresses common queries and concerns. So looking at this scenario, what other questions do you think you need to ask? Or do you even think you need to ask any other questions at all? So the third scenario here is that your team receives an email about upcoming IT maintenance that will affect several systems you use regularly. The email lists the system but does not mention the duration of the downtime and other necessary information. So here you look at it like, what other thing do you feel you need to ask? Do you need more clarifying questions? Do you feel everything is being answered? Then you are assigned to integrate a new natural language processing feature into an existing application. The project brief describes the end goal for user interaction improvement and enhanced data analysis capabilities through the NLP feature. So each of these scenarios, you look at it. Do you need to ask further questions? Everything is okay. Then here on your first day, you are given On your first day, you are given a rapid tour of the office and briefly introduced to different digital tools and platforms that the company uses, each with their distinct roles in operations, communication, and project management. Your orientation, your orientation session includes a quick overview of each tool by various team members, but it lacks in-depth training or guidance on how to effectively use these tools in your specific role. You are expected to start working on the project from the next day, which involves interacting with many of these platforms. So, what questions are you going to ask in this scenario? And we have other scenarios, 10 of the scenarios. So, you go through each of those scenarios and you look at each of them. Which questions do you need to ask? Are there further questions? And if you have further questions, you write down the questions. But if you feel like all of the questions you need are answered, then you give reasons why. So when you are done with that, you make a PowerPoint presentation about with a maximum of 12 slides. Then you convert it to PDF and make the submission on 10x. And the submission deadline is on the 24th, on Friday, 8 p.m. UTC. So yeah, that is all about the challenge, and you just look at each of the scenarios and you try to like fit into those scenarios and look at, do you have any questions you can ask there. So yeah, do you have any questions maybe regarding the scenarios or the presentation itself? Okay, thank you. Okay, 05, go on.
Okay, thank you. Can we prepare uh, uh, for each of scenario 5 questions, or how we can?
Okay, yeah, for each of the scenarios, 5 questions. And maybe if you've asked the maybe 2 questions and you feel you don't have any other questions, then you answer like you write your reason why. But each of the scenarios, you look at them individually and questions I can ask.
Okay.
Yeah. So any other question? Okay, so there are no other questions. Yeah, so before we go,